Authenticity isn't a nice to have in leadership. It's a non-negotiable. In a world full of facades, only your truth is the boldest move you can make. Welcome to the Danny V Show, the podcast for high-performing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs ready to lead with elegance, courage, and radical responsibility. I'm Danny V, and I'm here to help you strip away the fluff and step fully into your power at the boardroom and in business. In each episode, we'll share no-nonsense insights and real conversations on what it takes to show up authentically, make tough decisions with grace, and create impact at the highest levels. So if you're ready to own your voice and lead on your terms, you're in the right place. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the Danny V Show. Today, we are jumping into the most exciting episode with the incredible Ashleigh Conwell. She's a triplet mum, a widow, speaker, and course creator, empowering widows to grow from surviving into thriving. Today, we're going to be diving into what self-leadership looks like when you're moving through these parts of your life. After losing her husband while pregnant, 17 weeks pregnant with her triplets, life felt overwhelming and uncertain. But she chose to rise, not just for herself, but for her children and for the life she knew she deserved. So I'm so excited to share with what we're talking about today. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Danny V Show, Ash. It's so wonderful to have you a part of our community and to just share all your wisdom and knowledge with my audience.
I'm so looking forward to this chat today.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here. So I want to dive straight in, and I would love you maybe just to share a little bit of your story and why you're so passionate about supporting women and guiding them from surviving into thriving.
Absolutely. So my story really starts in 2020. And I think when we hear that year, everyone just goes, E20. We all have a story from that year. And my story started in the January of that year. And I lost my father-in-law after a very short and aggressive illness. In March, stood down from my job at Flight Centre due to the COVID pandemic. June, found out I was pregnant. Super exciting time. And then 3 weeks after that, we actually found out that we were expecting triplets. So, yeah, 2020 really
Exciting
delivered.
times.
Shock, exciting, all of the emotions wrapped into one. But just honestly, we just felt so lucky. My husband and I really dreamed of having a family. So that was June. Then in August, we celebrated our wedding anniversary. I didn't know that it would be our last together. The following week, my husband went out for his usual morning run, but he never returned home. So he was involved in an accident and passed away at the scene. So in an instant, I went from dreaming of this family life with husband and triplets on the way to becoming a widow. And a triplet pregnancy is high risk as it is. And now I was navigating widowhood as well and additional stress. So 2020 really, brutal is probably the only word that I can describe it.
Yeah.
Our little ones were born preemie and they arrived in the January of 2021. So I was pretty relieved to escape 2020. But then 12 days after their birth, my granddad had a fall and suffered a brain injury and passed away.
Ash.
So in 12 months, I lost 3 incredible men in my life, 3 father figures, and held that in the parallel of beautiful joy of welcoming our triplets. So survival mode is something that it's a comment that we say pretty off the cuff, and I didn't really understand survival mode until I was thrust into grief. So that is really how my journey started. And, that led me onto a path of a lot of inner work and a lot of finding myself again after my world had just completely shattered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you would have had to really step into such strong self-leadership too with having your beautiful triplets. and then grieving, especially your amazing husband, which you've shared a little bit about him with me, and then, the other men in your life as well. On a day-to-day basis, what did that look like? What did self-leadership look like for you then?
So self leadership was something that I actually thought I had a pretty good grasp of. And I
Mm,
felt that I was pretty self aware, had a lot of confidence. I mean, prior to 2020, everything was fabulous. I really was living on cloud nine, family life, career, like everything was great. So I just thought I was good at that. And, I was really grateful. I never took it for granted, but I felt, well, I know what self leadership is until it got completely taken away from me. And
yeah.
on a day to day basis, what it looked like was I was stripped to nothing. And I get emotional thinking back to that time because every ounce of my strength, both physical but also mental, was taken from me in that moment of losing my husband. And I actually didn't have the ability to even walk. And I know that sounds a bit strange, but physically, my body shut down and I
Yeah.
didn't know how to walk. It was a very strange feeling. My family were feeding me through a straw because I couldn't even open my mouth enough to eat. So my body shut
Oh,
down. And that's when I really had to work harder to engage this self leadership. And initially, if I'm honest, it wasn't there. And I just had to sit in that moment of just survival, knowing that
yeah.
my body was, putting all of the energy into the babies and keeping them happy and healthy. And I think that's actually what self leadership is. Firstly, is acknowledging and allowing almost that instinct of the human body and the human spirit to do what it needs to do and not trying to interfere with it. And that was a huge lesson for me, was to not try and fight it, not try and push and be tough on myself or say, get up and walk, this is what you need to do, but going, actually, let's honor, the space I am in right now first and foremost. And then I was able to start thinking about, okay, what do these steps look like? And the reality is initially I had a funeral service to plan. I was managing the estate, but I'm also pregnant with triplets. So
Yeah.
I then had to be really compassionate with myself from a self-leadership perspective. And it was really about taking it 10 minutes at a time. And that
Yeah.
wasn't doing anything extravagant. It was just coping for 10 minutes at a time. And then once I was compassionate with myself in that, I was able to stretch out to 20 minutes, sometimes an hour, sometimes I'd go back to 10. So I think, what I really learnt was that self leadership isn't about having a label or an expectation,
Mm,
but it is
yes.
truly about stopping and listening to what you need in that moment and not trying to rush through it either.
Yeah, I agree so deeply, and it's a big part of the healing process for any person in anything that they're grieving or even just working through is actually feeling the feelings. And that's such a big one for me because when I first stepped into my healing journey, which was probably about 20 years ago now, and I was actually Ash wanting to fix myself because I was married to an abusive man and I thought it was all my fault. I didn't know he was abusive at that time. I just thought that I had to fix myself. And until I learned how to really take it 10 minutes at a time, 20 minutes at a time and heal within, nothing changed. And you couldn't start thriving because of that survival. So that was so beautifully explained. Thank you so much. And so then when you started, being able to do an hour at a time and 2 hours at a time, and when the babies came, what was that moment where you thought, you know what, I can actually start to thrive even through all of this horrendous adversity?
Getting to a point of shifting from survival to thriving, I've had a few people ask me this question around, what was the moment? There wasn't a moment. It was this continual work, and it was a level of acceptance to know that not every day is progress. It's, grief or any type of healing is not this linear journey. It is, and you sometimes see different images where it's just this thread that's just a complete mess. And that's what it is. So I
It
think it
really
was
is.
probably firstly that acceptance. And I'm a type A personality. I love a color
Okay.
coded spreadsheet. I couldn't understand that concept. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I should be going through steps. And, there's a lot of theory around grief, of the stages of grief. I'm like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
I do this and I do that. And very early on, I'm like, oh, I'm not like on track. And I had this
Yeah.
like thought process, like, I'm not doing this right. And then I'm like, but I don't know how to do it right. Like, I only know how to do it my way. And,
Yes.
I think it was that acceptance in a way. And I actually hate using the word acceptance because I will never accept the loss either, or, what I've navigated, but to acknowledge
Yes.
this is my journey and this is a process and not steps. So it was that understanding to allow me to chip away at thriving and to say, I'm not going to achieve thriving. Because there's still moments now, 5 years later, that I absolutely slip back. And it was last week, for example, even mundane tasks can feel really heavy. So I think it's that constant acknowledgement and not having that pressure. But what I did do was I realized that I had cried every day for 365 days.
Mm.
And I don't mean a tear and feeling a bit sad. I mean like a full on, at least one meltdown, full tears to the point of nearly hyperventilating tears, like genuinely upset. And I had this realization. I didn't even know that I was counting the days. And I got to 365 and I went, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
Mm.
And it was in that moment that I realized that a large portion of that was crying around the babies, with them or near them, or just generally, that their first, X number of days, I had cried
Mm.
every single day. And that was due to the grief, but it was also navigating NICU, preemie babies, triplets, solo mum, like a lot of layers. And it was probably that realization where I sort of thought to myself, I'm not okay. And that was sort of definitely a pivotal moment of acknowledgement. But even that acknowledgement, I didn't then wake up the next day and say, okay, well, I'm going to change this and I'm now, not going to cry. It was, okay,
Yeah.
I can see this now. Now, what's the transition to the next step? So, not putting any like tough milestones on myself or set periods of, okay, well, in 7 days, I want to be here. And by the end of the month,
Yeah.
this is my goal, which we often do from a business or a corporate lens. We're so conditioned to that level of thinking and that level of achievement, or that we are successful when we go through these gates or milestones. And so I really had to like unlearn a lot of that behavior and to really lean into me as a person and a human. So I think that was a moment of realization, but it was a process to go, okay, I'm now ready and I want to work towards coming out of this survival mode because I don't know if I can do it any longer.
Yeah, yeah, I love how you keep coming back to acknowledgement. And the three pillars of my framework is awareness, and then you awaken, and then alignment. So that awareness and that acknowledgement, it is a place where you could sit there for a really long time, and to have that acknowledgement, it's so strong. And that really, I guess, leads into my next question, where there's so many women that lead at work really great, and their families, and they lead in so many different areas of their life, but when it comes to actually leading themselves, they really struggle and fall down. And you and I know, because we've both been through it, and I support a lot of women with it, is it is acknowledging that you can feel the feelings, you can drop into those whole body, I guess, dropping into that feeling would be one step that they could do to really start moving towards that acknowledgement, because they're not leading themselves. They're choosing to leave themselves to last, but lead everybody else really brilliantly.
I think you used a really good word there, Danny, which is choose. It is a choice.
Absolutely.
The truth is, it's easier for me to stay at home and grieve. It's easier for me to hide away from the world and just sort of shut down and continue, I guess, to do life as it was. Obviously, very different now, but that's the comfort zone. But that's not where the joy is. And that's not the right,
Yes.
the way that I want to move forward. So it's the choice. And I think women we do have this desire. We are ambitious, we are capable, and we have a lot of love to give because we're giving it to everyone else. So it's then the choice to, honor ourselves in that moment too,
Mm.
and to make that choice. And like I said, I don't believe that you then just make a plan and that's it, off you go. It's a transition of thinking, okay, well, what does this look like? And that changes, certainly over these last 5 years. What was working for me initially doesn't work now, and vice versa. Like, it's a constant evolution.
Yes.
And I think that's the important thing, is to go, are we truly happy in our current state, whether that be work, family, or otherwise? And if the answer is no, okay, the answer is no. How do we then start to formulate what that looks like? And for me, it always comes back to values. What are my values? Why are those values important to me? And then understanding, well, when do I feel joy? When am I honoring those values, and what things do I need to change in order to fulfill those values more, knowing that they bring me joy? So that's what I say is very much around the choice aspect of choosing, and for my situation, it's choosing not to sit in the grief. The grief is there. It is a big part of me. Absolutely. It will never leave. And choosing joy. And that means showing up. And that's courageous. It's not easy.
No.
And an example of that is, I just recently went on a holiday with some of our kindy friends, and that takes a lot of courage. I'm there as a solo mum. I'm responsible for 3 kids in the pool. So I'm in the pool. But also it's being around other families, and I'm seeing dads play with their kids, and that's confronting. And we get to create core memories as well, and these families support us. So it's taking those courageous steps, but also knowing your boundaries. It's not about taking a courageous step if it's going to derail you either, but
Mm.
it's sort of like little tiny steps, but also learning where those limits are. And I've sort of had that where I've thought, oh, I'm doing okay. And then I've realized, actually, I've probably pushed myself a bit far, so I can adjust that for next time. So constant reassessment, constant, changing, and just, yeah, making that choice.
Yeah, I love that. There's a couple of aspects that you spoke about there, making the choice and then recalibrating as well. So, not judging yourself on that journey. So, if you've pushed yourself a little bit far, that's okay. Have that awareness and make a choice to step back for a bit, but it doesn't mean forever. And I really love how you
Mm.
said with the triplets, you're in the pool, because that's such a great, it's such a great
Yeah.
analogy for this work, isn't it? Like, you're in the pool
Yeah.
and you have a choice to swim or sink. And
Yeah.
swimming is, you have to be courageous, you have to be strong, and that looks different for everybody as well. Like, that swimming looks different for everybody, and the values as
Totally.
well. And you kept speaking about feeling that joy. So joy is
Mm.
obviously a really huge value of yours, and I speak a lot about intrinsic and extrinsic values. And I think sometimes when people start this work, they say that their values are family or friends or things that are on the outside. So you're not feeling the family, you're not feeling the friends. So then really going deeper and thinking, what are those feelings that you feel when you're with family? So for me, I'm saying family because it is an extrinsic value of mine, but it brings me love and connection. So love and connection is such a strong value because I feel them. And then knowing, what do I choose to feel today? Do I feel to choose joy? Do I feel to choose connection? So really that deep feeling of your values makes such a difference as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I definitely would have preferred to sit on the side of the pool and chat with the girls because I was in the pool. And when I say in the pool, I wasn't just like sitting on the side, like I had to be fully in. And then the kids wanted to go down the water slides. And I'm not a very like adventurous person. So to then be at the
This.
bottom of the water slide, catching kids getting splashed, I was like, I don't know why I bothered to do my hair and makeup because I look like a drowned rat. So look, it
It's
wasn't
the
ideal.
best
And at the
though.
same time, they loved it. And so seeing their smiles, it did bring us all a lot of joy. And they still talk about it. Their favorite part was the water slide. So I'm so glad that I did that for them, even though, yeah, I'm definitely better on the side of the pool with a cocktail in hand.
Maybe you can do bit of A, bit of B.
Look, we're definitely going to be enhancing our swimming skills this summer so that maybe, yeah, next holiday I can just sit on the edge of the pool and not be fully drenched.
Or you can engage with your cocktail holding ability as you go down the slide.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so your message, and this is my interpretation of your message, but it's really
Mm.
about guiding women to rise again and how you can do that with such grace and beautiful energy. And that's what I interpret from you, from knowing you. And you just have this beautiful energy that really emanates what it is to find yourself again, even in the darkest of times. And as we said, that you need to be courageous. You really need to step into that leadership role for yourself. And there's so many women that haven't even been through the grief that you've been going through, but they are grieving. I mean, for me personally at the moment, I'm grieving my mum as she's being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I'm grieving the loss of my mum. I'm going through grief right now as well and navigating that. So, but it's not on the level of yours. What would advice that you could give people, women in business, and also women that are just navigating finding themselves again, what rising again can look like through leading self? You know, we've spoken about awareness, we've spoken about really getting down and feeling those feelings and being okay with that. When you start thinking about that rising again, I feel that feeling when I say that. What could be like a aha moment that, "Oh, I'm on the right track."
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I think firstly, I'd love to acknowledge and say thank you for sharing because all grief is valid. And there are so many forms of grief. We can be grieving the loss of a loved one, but we can also be grieving a loved one who's still with us.
Yeah.
And I've certainly experienced that as well. We can have that grief for maybe being made redundant, career changes. Like there's so
Yes.
many forms. And I think that when we feel, for me, it has been a feeling. I never imagined working in grief.
Mm.
It has been part of me and it is part of my life, but I never imagined doing work in this space. And at the same time, it feels so aligned and it feels like this is what I'm meant to do. So I think there is an element of feeling, but it's also making intentional choices. I didn't
Yes.
just say, oh, I'm going to work in grief. I took action. I connected with, other entrepreneurs. I connected with, women in business and I asked them, tell me about your business. How did you get here? Why are you doing this? And, you know, just that collaboration. And I also realized through that, not only the power of and just being around these women, I decided I wanted to be part of that community as well. So I needed to sort of work on, yes, I'm still part of the corporate world, which I love. And there is this whole other community that I kind of didn't really know existed. Of course, it's existed, but I've never been part of it. I've never experienced it. And so that was a real opportunity for me as well to go, well,
Mm.
not only am I creating, for me as an individual, but what environment am I putting myself in?
Yes.
Who are the people I need around me now in this new chapter of my life? What does that feel like as well? What joy does that give me? What challenges? And, being in business, I shared with you before we started recording, I'm like, it is a steep learning curve. I am learning at the most rapid pace. And, I've got my uni degree and I've done some mini MBAs. This is completely different.
It
I am
is.
learning on the fly. I'm teaching myself all sorts of skills. I am the finance department, the technology department, customer
It's
service.
true.
Like I am everything. And so you're learning at this rapid rate. And the word exhilarating was something that we also spoke about earlier. It was like, it's
Mm.
exhilarating and incredibly challenging. And that holding both of those has also re-energized me. And I
Yeah.
think it's looking for that, well, what does bring you joy? What's going to energize you? Where are you going to feel challenged and inspired? But also, where are you going to feel held and protected and safe?
Yes.
And so I
Yeah.
think it's about holding all of these emotions because that also connects with your values. That's where I think the magic happens. That's where I think we start to feel I'm beginning to thrive. Maybe I'm not there yet, or, you know, it's still that process. We might still slip back into survival, and that's okay because we don't have those linear steps. We're in that messy,
Absolutely.
thread of craziness. But that's what being in the arena looks like. That's what being in the pool is when, a kid's flying down a water slide at you. We get all of those emotions. So I think that's where I started to feel, yeah, this is what I'm meant to be. It's not easy. It's not pretty. And at the same time, it feels so right. And it's exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, and that's true alignment, isn't it? It's like you're here for your purpose. Like you didn't think you'd be doing this, but you feel such deep alignment to it and understanding that you are on the right path. I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing that too. Now, I've got one last question for you, Ash. So my framework that I work with my clients with is called Embody. So it's energy, mindset, body, ownership, direction, and you. So becoming your authentic self. When you think about moving through rising again, so really thinking about, there's so many different levels of rising again, and the work that you do with your incredible clients, if you could just pick one of those parts of my framework, what would be the strongest part that you think, you know what, this is where you're going to have evidence that you're rising again?
I would actually say body. After loss and after delivering preemie triplets, it was my body that actually carried a lot of the trauma. I shared
Yes.
earlier around the challenges of walking. I actually, for the first time in my life, suffered a series of injuries post
Mm,
birth. I've never been injured. I've been super active. And it was the first time that I had injury. Like I was getting cortisol injections in my knees. I was having major physio for my hips and I had to wear a brace 24/7 just to walk. My body was telling me, slow down, your body was carrying the trauma. And that's been a journey as well. So I've really learned that looking after the body, like the importance of that. And it's not about, signing up to crazy gym programs or anything like, and if that's for you, amazing. But it's actually caring for your body. And I've had to adjust like my physical exercise routines. I've had a significant focus on my nutrition and my health because I've noticed changes in my gut. I think it's also just getting older, but definitely around, trauma runs through your body. And so the body is the foundation for everything.
yes.
So I have really learnt that, whereas I think I never really tuned into it before because I was active and because I was healthy and it just probably worked for me. But now that I've had such a shock to the system, I've had to really focus on that again, knowing that, like I said, it is that foundation. So if we care for that, and I know it's cliche and everyone's like, look after yourself, like eat well, exercise and sleep. We know that. And it changes. Different phases of
Yes.
our life, we need different things. And sometimes it needs to be more of a focus than others. But I'm often reminding myself of a quote that I heard at a conference a few years ago, which was, if you don't make time for wellness, you have to make time for illness. And
It's
that's
so
been a
true.
reminder to me.
And your nervous system as well. So the part of the body and part of the framework is your nervous system. And that's exactly what you're speaking about. Like your body broke down because your nervous system was just like, I'm out. I can't do this anymore.
Exactly.
There's a really incredible book. I don't know if you've read it, called The Body Keeps the Score. And that speaks exactly around what you're talking about. And it also speaks about how your thoughts can actually affect your body as well. So that's that trauma of what was happening to you emotionally. And then your body responded to it. So the body keeps the score if you want to learn more about that, my beautiful listeners. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ash. I have enjoyed having you here and just sharing all your incredible wisdom with my audience. And I can't wait to hear takeaways. So, to everybody out there, if you're wanting to leave a comment below or even just send us some details, all Ash's details will also be in the show notes. And we would love to hear your biggest takeaway for today. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me on the Danny V Show today. I hope you're leaving this episode feeling inspired and empowered. My goal is always to bring you elegant insights with a bold impact. If you enjoyed our conversation, I invite you to subscribe to the show and leave a quick review. Your feedback not only means the world to me, but it also helps other growth-minded leaders find this community. Remember, leadership is an inside-out journey. The poise, the passion, and the purpose we cultivate within ourselves are what transform the world around us. So until next time, stay true to your vision and keep leading with the unique mix of grace and strength. Stay radiant, stay resilient, and I'll be right here cheering you on. I can't wait to hang out with you again on the next episode of The Danny V Show.